Hi everyone, in this video I want to talk about determining the probability of what's called a simple event. Here are the two problems that we'll do, and to make sure we don't take ourselves too seriously, let's think about the fun question. What emotion best describes your week thus far? That's a question that I frequently ask my students to check in on them. So where does this fall in the grand scheme of things? Probability really could be nested under any of these subjects, but Algebra I is when I have taught this, sometimes Algebra II as well. Probability, it seems to be that smaller subject within our whole curriculum that sometimes potentially gets pushed to the side, or is like a mini lesson sometimes. And so it is necessary for this test prep to make sure that you do practice it. Although sometimes it can kind of get overshadowed occasionally. So the type of problem that I have seen most often on these tests is the classic marble question. So it's a bag containing marbles. For this one, let's talk about jelly beans. And they always seem to describe the colors and the number of these marbles or jelly beans. And then the simple event comes in where you are just pulling one marble. So right here, this P stands for probability. I'm not sure if they would use that wording on the ACT, but that notation, but let's practice it just in case. So the probability of pulling a jelly bean that is not green is the case that we have here for this first one. Okay, so we have to think about what probability is. We are just looking for, let's call it a fraction every time, and it is the number of outcomes that you want over the total outcomes. Let's say it in simple terms like that. So what outcome do we want? The not greens. Okay. So that would be all of the black plus red plus orange, and then over total. So black plus red plus orange is 4 plus 8 plus 5. We are not adding in the greens. We don't want the greens. And then that would be over the total, and you would add all of them. So 4 plus 8 plus 5 plus 7. And just doing a little mental math there, we have 4 plus 8 is 12, plus 5 is 17. And then we have 4 plus 8 is 12, plus 5 is 17, plus 7 is 24. So your final answer would be 17 out of 24. There is a chance that you would be asked for you to figure out the opposite of that. Like, what would the probability of the greens be? The probability of green would then just be one whole, or like 100%, minus the 17/24. And that one whole is the same thing as 24 over 24 minus the 17 over 24, and that would just be the 7 over 24. Obviously, there are 7 greens, so that makes sense. Let's erase that for now. Just that's not what it's asking, so I don't want to confuse you. But occasionally you'll be asked for the greens or the opposite of the greens. So final answer is 17 over 24, but notice that the directions say to write it as a decimal and fraction and percentage. I mostly just decided that in case it's written in a different form. It also says round to the nearest hundredth. So in this case, you could get that fraction just typing it into the calculator. I'm seeing 0.71 would be the rounded answer. And then if I then did the percentage, it technically is 70.83%. So technically it's, well, probability is usually written as a fraction. I did not want to only do a fraction in case for some reason your answer options were reported as percentages or something like that. So, all right, so number 2, let's try it. Red, green, or orange. So or is typically code for plus, for adding with probability, because we want to know all of those options together. So the probability of red, green, or orange. So that would be red plus green plus orange over total. And that is 8 plus 7 plus 5 over total. Now we know the total from before is 24. And that's 15 plus 5 is 20. I picked this second one to be a tiny bit harder than the first one because you do have to simplify the fraction. So 20 and 24 are divisible by 4. So this would be 5, this would be 6 if you divided 4 out, top and bottom. So technically the answer is 5/6. It's also, just plugging in the calculator, it's 0.83. And if I rounded to the nearest hundredth, if it was a percentage, 83.33%. Remember, you always move the decimal place over twice. So any of these are my answer. Just depends on what format you are asked for. So why don't you give these practice problems a shot, and I'm going to show you the answers in a second. If you would like to pause the video, note that this situation is about balls that have numbers on them, numbers 1 through 30. And it's basically like bingo, you can imagine. And the first is probability of pulling an odd number, and then the next is a 2-digit number. So go ahead and pause the video. And here are the 2 answers. So it's for the odds, it would be half of them would be odd. Half of the numbers from 1 to 30. And then the next one's tricky. If it's a 2-digit number, that there are technically 21 numbers. So you might want to count those off. That ends up being 0.7 or 70% of the balls that have 2-digit numbers. So I hope that helped you in some way. End with a quote: "Do not take life too seriously. You will never get out of it alive." All right, so now that you've had some time to think about the fun question, I'd love to see your answers in the comments. And if you would like to keep up with new videos, I'd appreciate if you clicked subscribe. Have a great day.